What's going on here?
That's that blue dot. There is
Two Midwestern guys here. What's going on? Yes, today of all days. We're going to see you at 11. We're going to see you at 11 too. It's going to be a fun.
The House Committee on Government Operations will come to order. If anyone is wishing to speak on the bills that we have on the agenda today, we do ask that you fill out a white card on the testimony table and turn it in to our clerk here. I will remind you that we are going to limit comments to about 2 to 3 minutes in the interest of time. So, Mr. Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Chair Bagol,
Here.
Representatives Harris. Here. Vanderwall. Present. Fitzgerald. Here. McFall. Here. Mr. Chair, you have 5 members present, a quorum.
Thank you. Okay, Vice Chair Harris moves to adopt the minutes from our May 8th meeting. Seeing no objections, so ordered. Okay, and then we have Representative Vanderwall is going to move H1 substitute for House Bill 4066 be adopted. Mr. Clerk, will you call the roll?
On the motion to adopt the substitute, Chair Bagol,
Yes.
Representatives Harris.
Yes.
Vanderwall.
Yes.
Fitzgerald.
No.
McFall. No. Mr. Chair, you have 3 yeas, 2 nays, 0 pass. The motion prevails.
Okay, thank you. The substitute is adopted. Okay, good morning, everyone, and thanks for attending. As you know, we're going to be taking up some testimony on House Bill 4066 H1, sponsored by Representative Wolford, and House Bill 4469, sponsored by Representative Linting. I'm looking forward to hearing testimony on those bills. I think it's worthy to note that women's sports were created to give women a level playing field and let them highlight their athletic ability. And I think through the years, we've seen a trend of biological males that are competing in women's sports. And that's not a partisan statement. That's just facts. And the bills that you're going to hear today are going to make some efforts to shore that up. So I'm looking forward to hearing some of the ramifications of allowing men and boys in these sports and the detrimental effects that it has on the women who are competing. So I am going to ask everybody to please be respectful. You're going to hear a lot of testimony today. We will gavel you down if you're not keeping the decorum. Do not shout out when people are speaking and interrupt the testimony, or you will be asked to leave, okay? So no reason we can't be courteous of people. Okay, at this time I'll have Representative Wolford, Representative Linting, and we have Peyton McNabb here today, correct? Okay, if all 3 of you would like to come up to the testimony table. I know that Representative Linting is double booked, so we're going to take testimony from her today, and then immediately following Representative Wolford's testimony, she'll be leaving. Appreciate you fitting this into your busy schedule, Representative Linting. You guys may begin when you're ready.
Good morning. Thank you, Chair Bagol and members of the committee for allowing me to testify on behalf of House Bill 4469 this morning. This legislation is simple and it should not be controversial. It is an important legal fix to safeguard fairness in athletics, protect historic success of Title IX, and above all, ensure the safety and well-being of girls' athletics. House Bill 4469 is necessary because it provides schools with the clear authority to establish and enforce policies that protect the integrity of women's sports. Without this bill, schools face uncertainty and inconsistency in how they handle the participation of biological male athletes in female sports. As currently written, the Elliott-Larsen Act could prohibit schools from enforcing policies like Representative Wolford's, labeling it discriminatory. Acknowledging biological realities that impact the safety of young girls is not discriminatory, and claiming it as such makes a loud and clear statement that we as a body care more about the law protecting someone's feelings than the law protecting the safety, opportunity, and well-being of our young girls. I urge the committee to stand with me in protecting our girls and upholding the rights, opportunities, and dreams that women have fought for decades. Thank you, Chair Bugel.
Representative Wolford.
Thank you, Representative Lenning. Thank you, Chair Bagol and the rest of the committee members. Members of Government Operations Committee, I want to thank you for giving me and my guests the opportunity to speak on this important issue today. I'm pleased to welcome to the Capitol today an exemplary young woman whose story is a testament to why we need this legislation that sits before your committee today. Many of you may already recognize her name, Peyton McNabb. Peyton made national headlines just a few years ago when she suffered traumatic brain damage and partial paralysis while competing in a high school volleyball game against a biological male who spiked the ball in her face. I want to read that one more time. Peyton McNabb suffered traumatic brain damage and partial paralysis while competing in high school volleyball. She has gifted us with her enormous amount of her time and effort to be here today and tell us more about her story and more about why Michigan needs a bill prohibiting biological males from competing in women's sports. Protecting Michigan's young women and girls should not be a partisan issue. It should be a cause for every single one of the people's elected representatives to get behind. As most of you probably know, the Michigan High School Athletic Association has admitted that they're currently allowing biological males to compete in women's sports divisions here in our state. Their defiance of federal directives prohibiting males in women's sports is both insane and dangerous. Nobody is more familiar with the dangers of denying basic biological reality than my guest, Peyton. I will allow her to share more from her perspective now. Thank you to the committee, thank you, Chair, and thank you, Peyton, for being here today.
Thank you all. Dear members of the committee, my name is Peyton McNabb. I'm an ambassador for independent women and a former volleyball athlete. I want to thank Representative Wolford for introducing House Bill 4066. I urge this committee to protect female athletes from being permanently injured and losing roster spots and titles at the hands of male players. On September 1st, 2022, I was struck in the head by a spiked ball during a volleyball game by a male on the opposing team. As a result of the sheer impact of the ball, I received a concussion and a neck injury. I love sports, the camaraderie, discipline, the team bonding, and the confidence for the future. I was a three-sport athlete in high school, participating in softball, basketball, and volleyball. I was always very aware of the possibility of injury during competitive play, but my experience on the court that day was different. The hit was so violent, I was knocked unconscious, lying in a fencing position for over 30 seconds. Years later, my body and mind are still recovering from the hit. I still suffer from partial paralysis on my right side, vision problems, cognitive issues, constant headaches, and more. This incident was 100% avoidable if my rights as a female athlete had not been excluded on the basis of being inclusive to allow a male to compete with women. I nor my teammates ever agreed to play against a male athlete. We were forced to by our state athletic association. If the adults in the room don't start standing up and putting an end to this senseless threat to females, there won't be women's sports. Women have a right to a fair and equal opportunity on and off the playing field. Men have no place in our single-sex spaces. Allowing males to compete in women's sports is unfair to women who have fought for their spot on their team and for the opportunity to compete. It is unfair because of the differences between men and women, where the severity of potential injury at the hands of a male athlete is immense. Males have larger hearts, larger lungs, more bone mass, more muscle mass, stronger muscles, less fat, and no menstrual cycles. Males jump approximately 25% higher than females and throw about 25% further than females. Males run approximately 11% faster and accelerate about 20% faster than females. Males punch 30 to 162% harder than females. House Bill 4066 protects women and girls against sex discrimination and safeguards them from the horrific incidents female athletes have suffered due to inaction at the state level. To date, 2,012 female athletes have lost opportunities to males, and 2,789 medals have been stolen from women by men. House Bill 4066 appropriately recognizes that equality is not a game, and women deserve safe and fair competitions. There's a reason that over 80% of Americans believe that there are important reasons to separate the sexes when it comes to sports. It's because they recognize objective truth and respect the biological differences of the sexes. I love being an athlete, as do the other girls I play with. I write to you today to represent not just myself, but to ensure all female athletes, my little sister, my cousins, my teammates, have access to fair competition. Women deserve to compete on a level playing field without fear of injury. This is why it is crucial that you pass House Bill 4066 to prevent other female athletes from suffering from injuries such as my own. Similar legislation has received bipartisan support across the United States, as it should. Thank you to Representative Wolford for introducing this common sense legislation to ensure equal athletic opportunity for the over 5 million women and girls in Michigan. I urge Michigan to follow suit with the 27 other states that have stood with women and saved women's sports by passing House Bill 4066. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your testimony. Okay, my understanding that we have a video here from Riley Gaines, if we could play that.
My name is Riley Gaines. I am so sorry that I cannot be in Michigan today to testify before the Committee on Government Operations in support of HB 4066. Thank you for accepting this testimony. By now, many of you may know my story. I was a member of the University of Kentucky women's swim and dive team, where I finished my career as a 12-time NCAA All-American, a 5-time SEC champion, the SEC record holder in the 200 butterfly, making me one of the fastest Americans of all time, and a 2-time Olympic trial qualifier. In March of 2022, my teammates and I were forced to compete against a male named Leah, formerly Will Thomas. Thomas was allowed to compete in the women's division after competing as a member of the University of Pennsylvania's men's team for 3 years, where at best he was ranked 462nd in the men's division. We watched in dismay as Thomas swam to a national title in the 500 freestyle, beating out the most impressive and accomplished female swimmers this world has ever seen, including Olympians, including American record holders. When I raced Thomas in the 200 freestyle, we tied. We ended up going the exact same time down to the 100th of a second. But despite tying, Thomas was given the trophy. It was then that I realized the NCAA intentionally and explicitly discriminated on the basis of sex. But that is not all. In addition to being forced to give up our awards, our titles, and our opportunities, us as female swimmers were forced to share a locker room with Thomas, a 6'4", 22-year-old man, fully equipped with and exposing male genitalia, inches away from where we were simultaneously fully unclothed. We were not forewarned, we would not ask for our consent, and we did not give our consent. I can attest to the tears that I saw from girls who missed out on being named an All-American by one place. I can attest to the extreme discomfort in the locker room when you turn around and there's a 22-year-old man fully unclothed, as 18-year-old girls are exposed next to these male body parts. I can attest to the anger and frustration expressed by these girls who had worked so hard. Girls like myself had sacrificed so much to get to this moment, only to have to compete in what was a farce. And I can attest to the fact that around the country, female athletes who protested the inclusion of Thomas in the women's division were threatened, intimidated, and emotionally blackmailed into silence and submission. Unfortunately, my story and the experiences of Division I swimmers are not unique. Every single day, I learn of new women and girls who have fallen victim to the extreme agenda to erase women. It has all gone too far. Across various sports, female athletes are losing not only awards, but opportunities to compete at all. Over 2,000 female athletes have been displaced by males competing in women's sporting events. Allowing men to compete in women's sports is unfair to women who have fought for their spot on the team and the athletic opportunity to compete. And it's unfair because of the stark athletic differences between men and women, where the severity of potential injury at the hands of male athletes is immense and where opportunities and resources for women are already extremely scarce. Michigan currently has no protections for women's sports. HB 4066 ensures female opportunities, rights, and safety are a priority. I hope you join the other 27 states at this point that have protections for female sports. Committee on Government Operations, please pass HB 4066 on behalf of the over 5 million women and girls in Michigan. Thank you, Representative Wolford, for leading the way in the fight for women's equality, privacy, respect, safety, and opportunities by introducing this legislation. It's time that Michigan stands with women and protects its female athletes. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for Riley Gaines for sharing that video with us, and thanks for your testimony today. I think we have some members that have some questions. Representative Fitzgerald?
Chair, I have a closing statement if I could before the questions.
Sure, go ahead.
Thank you so much. I just want to remind us that the NCAA ruled in favor of the President's executive order and in line with this bill 4066. In other words, grade 13, this is not allowed. So why would we allow this in K through 12 sports? I want to leave you with this reminder that if a biological male is participating in a girl's sport, it's one less roster spot. One less roster spot means a female high school athlete who wanted to compete and partake in a sport that they love may have been cut from the team. It might mean an aspiring female college athlete didn't get the scholarship to a college to continue playing the sport and working towards a degree. It sends a terrible message to a young female athlete who just wants to have a fair playing field. And lastly, if you have a daughter or you plan on having children, when you make your decision today, I want you to think, if it was your daughter, if it was your granddaughter, how would you vote? How would you feel? And where would you stand? Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You're welcome. Thank you. I share the same concerns that you have. Representative Fitzgerald, if you'd like to go ahead with the question.
Yeah, thank you. Apologies. The question that I have, the bill that I have a question about is more regards to 4469. But I think that it's important, you know, in a bit of a framing of the question does piggyback off of your closing remark, which is that trans children are children. Trans athletes are athletes. Trans people are people. And they are afforded the rights of this state and this nation without discrimination. And so while thinking of my daughter and her future and the future of her peers and her friends and maybe herself, I ask this question. Is it possible that by amending the Elliott Larson Civil Rights Act to erode civil rights in Michigan, may this create an opportunity to erode the civil rights of other individuals in the future? And a simple yes or no would be appreciated.
Well, this is Representative Riley Lenting's bill, but the answer to...
But your bill cannot go into force without 4469, is that correct? It would not be constitutional?
To answer your question, you made a remark that people are people, that athletes are athletes, and you're right. And that's why there are boys in men's sports and there's girls in women's sports.
Representative Harris?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Rep. Wolford, thank you for bringing this forward. Thank you to our guests for being here and testifying, and I wish I could say thank you to Riley. Hopefully she listens to this. I'm a father of 4 girls, all of which played sports at some point. I have 2 boys as well, and I can tell you that we've discussed this issue with our children, and they feel exactly the same as what you guys are trying to solve here. And so I appreciate you bringing this forward. I think there is an absolute disparity between the biological sexes when it comes to athletics, and I think this is important for safety of our girls. So thank you.
Thank you, Representative.
Representative McFall?
Thank you, Chair. Representative, can you tell me, are you trans?
Are you?
I asked you the question.
All right, I'm asking the question back to you.
Right,
Representative,
but
I don't know that that's an
But what I want to know,
appropriate
yeah,
question.
but I'm actually going somewhere with this. I'm going somewhere with this because I want to know how does a 14-year-old girl prove whether or not she's trans to a 50-year-old coach?
Representative, I don't think that's an appropriate question to be asking here today, and I ask you to remain. Thank you. We'll move on to Representative Fitzgerald.
I did not get an answer to my initial question, whether this would potentially
Let me
erode
ask-
future rights.
Let me answer it to you now. Athletes are still welcome to participate in sports under my bill, under Riley's bill. It just ensures that they're participating in athletics based on their biological sex as listed on their birth certificate. An executive order was recently issued pertaining to this title that you're referring to, and Riley's bill makes updates to ensure that Michigan is in compliance with that order.
The current status, there was a mention that we don't currently have any framework. Apologies, I think it may have been Ms. Gaines who made the statement that we currently don't have any safeguards in place to do this. I believe that every bit of information has been squeezed out of this at this point in the media, and I read a number of articles while researching these bills to note that the MHSAA, an independent, non-governmental body of this state, does have a case-by-case method by which they then approve a competition waiver. I believe that the statistics that I saw noted that there were 2 athletes who had received such a waiver of 170,000 competitive athletes in the state of Michigan this past school year, which I am not a statistician, but that is, I believe, statistically 0. I'm not quite sure where the failings of that body currently in the state of Michigan leave issue for competitive athletics here in the state of Michigan. I am a former MHSAA athlete. I am a former NCAA athlete, and I'm not quite sure what problem we are wishing to solve here in the state of Michigan, while also eroding the civil rights of individuals in this state.
Is that a question to me or a
I was going
statement,
to say, Representative, is there a question in there? I'm not sure, but I think it was.
But I'll answer it for you.
I'd be happy to end with a question.
You're not a statistician. Are you a statistician, Peyton?
I'm not.
What if it is 0? What if it's 2? How many more brain injuries do we need to take place in our state and around the country to where you, Representative Fitzgerald, understand that there are real people with real issues that are being hurt? It's ironic to me that even you as a politician know that this is polling at over 80%. And yet you still stand against this. You stand against women. You stand against Peyton, who's sitting here before us, using words.
Point of
like-
order, Mr. Chair. I'd like the
Finish my
comments be
statement.
pointed to the direction of the chair and not to actually
use terms like
testify for the
statistician.
member sitting on this committee.
Okay,
Use
yeah,
terms like-
Representative, we'll move on now.
Thank you,
Okay,
sir.
we have a number of people wishing to speak. You know, we've come a long way in women's rights, and I agree with what you're bringing forward here today. We don't want to erode those rights. I have a whole house full of girls that my wife and I raised, so some of this hits home with me as well. So I appreciate your efforts here today. I think it's our duty to bring these things up and make the reflect the changes here in this state, so. Okay, I have a lot of people wanting to speak today, so we're going to get to that now. The first one we have wishing to speak opposing the bill is Emma, is it Zanoth? Or there might be an I on there. Zanotti?
You got it. You got
Okay.
Stay here.
You made me sit down now. Up on deck next is Kyle Kamansky. So if Kyle wants to get ready, I don't know if he's in the room or upstairs. Is it Emmy?
Emmy, yeah. Is the mic on?
If the red button's on.
Okay. My name is Emmy Zanotti. I'm the Senior Director of Movement Building and Political Affairs at Equality Michigan, Michigan statewide LGBTQ advocacy organization. I'm speaking today in opposition of House Bills 4066 and 4469. Appreciate Chair Bagol and the members of the committee you allowing space for this important discussion today. I was looking through the bill and the substitute, which kind of caught us by surprise, and I know we're talking about women and girls' safety, so I was a little caught off guard. And I looked a lot through the bill. I didn't see mentions of making sure we're continuing access to pre-K or to school meals in the bill. I know it's short, but looking at the other bill, seems like gun violence is a large epidemic in this country, but I didn't see this addressed in the proposed policy that will keep women and girls safe in schools. Affordable housing isn't addressed in these policies to make sure these kids have roofs over their heads. But the 0 trans girls who are participating with a waiver in spring and winter sports in Michigan is apparently the focus of keeping women and girls safe today. But I wanted to call in a quote from someone who's very passionate on this topic that says, "The conversation we're having today is far bigger than athletic achievement. It's hard to explain when you only get a few minutes of testimony, but let's be honest, it's not about trophies. It's about opportunity. It's about lifelong skills and characteristics you develop from playing sports. Playing sports has given me the leadership to do the work I do today, to have the security to take arrows in this arena, to be held hostage. It's playing sports that has given me the confidence, and no girl should lose out on that. It's also far bigger than athletic success or chances for opportunity. It's about those transferable skills. There was an Ernst & Young study that came out that said 94% of female C-level executives, so CEO, COO, CFO, 94% of those females were female athletes. And I think it's an entirely true testament of what it means to be an athlete and those skills that it provides you. Now, I also must confess, as I said, these aren't my words. I'm just quoting Miss Riley Gaines, who we heard from earlier. I couldn't agree more with Miss Gaines. Whether our kids finish in first place, second place, third place, or tied for fifth place, participating in sports teaches important values like perseverance, dedication, self-assurance, and teamwork. We should want more young people to play sports in our state, not put up more barriers for all girls, like invasive inspections and ridicule about what gender they are because their hair's too short, they're too tall, their shoulders are too broad, or because they have a good serve. So please stop subjecting all of the girls of this state to invasive interrogation or public ridicule. Again, I oppose House Bills 4066 and 4469. Thank you to the committee again and Chair Bagol for your time today.
Thank you. Okay, is Kyle Zawacki here? Okay. We'll give him a quick minute to come down. And then next after that, if they want to make their way down, it's Alexandria Stam and Rachel Richards. Thank you. Okay, Kyle's with the ACLU of Michigan.
It's Kyle Zawacki, not Kaminsky. But my name is Kyle Zawacki, and I'm here with the American Civil Liberties Union of Michigan. I'm the legislative director there. Thank you, Chair, committee members, for allowing us the opportunity to testify, as always. The ACLU of Michigan strongly opposes House Bills 4066 and 4469, which would harm transgender students, violate civil rights, and set dangerous precedent for discrimination in Michigan schools. It is a fundamental concept in Michigan's school system that regardless of an individual's identifying features, that students have an equal opportunity and access in those schools. These bills create a system of exclusion based on gender identity, effectively barring transgender girls from participating in sports aligned with their gender identity. A blatant violation of the principles of equality enshrined in the 1964 Civil Rights Act and Michigan's own Elliott Larson Civil Rights Act. Together, these bills would cause a host of issues. They would violate equal protection principles, require an invasion of medical privacy, undermine civil rights protections, and suppress both speech and advocacy. By mandating sex-based separation under rigid, non-scientific biological definitions, the bills raise serious equal protection concerns under both state and federal law, particularly as they single out transgender youth for different treatment. House Bill 4469's mandate that eligibility be based on sex listed under an individual's original birth certificate poses serious privacy concerns, particularly for transgender students. This requirement would force transgender students to either disclose their personal medical or legal history or be excluded from participation. This policy can expose students to discrimination simply for being who they are. The United States Supreme Court in Bostock v. Clayton County of 2020 established that discrimination based on transgender status is a form of sex discrimination. In Grimm versus Gloucester County School Board in 2020 also, the court affirmed that by denying transgender students access to accommodations consistent with their gender identity, it is a violation of Title IX of the 1964 Civil Rights Act. House Bills 4066 and 4469 conflict with both of these rulings as they seek to exclude transgender students from activities that align with their gender identity. Both of the bills also threaten the First Amendment rights potentially by chilling speech and advocacy, because under these bills, schools and students who advocate for transgender inclusion could face legal repercussions. Students may be discouraged from speaking in support of themselves or their classmates, or for reporting violations of these laws in retaliation for legal action. The ACLU of Michigan opposes both House Bills 4066 and 4469 strongly. They would codify discrimination of transgender girls from girls' sports team and deny them access to educational and extracurricular opportunities. I'm happy to take any questions, and thank you for letting me testify.
Representative Harris.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a question for you, and thank you again for being here. You're always an adult when you testify. I appreciate that, and you know, even though we may have opposing views, I do appreciate your demeanor. Have you ever read the MHSAA medical history physical form that has to be submitted to the schools?
I am not an MHSAA official. I represent the ACLU of Michigan, and we're looking at this strictly from a civil rights and a civil liberties perspective, and that's our lens. I do appreciate, I know that there are a lot of officials for the Michigan High School Athletic Association, and they have consulted with the medical professionals to develop those. We have not been in part of those conversations, no.
Okay. Well, just to clarify, what they turn into the schools, what has to be completed by the doctor, turned into the schools, specifically designates whether that athlete is a male or a female. So I don't know that this is necessarily a invasion of medical privacy when they have to turn this in already. And I guess if you view it that way, have you taken issue with this physical form that gets submitted through our school systems?
I think the MHSAA administering that process is an internal process that they go through. And again, I can't speak for the MHSAA by any means. We're not affiliated. We neither support nor oppose the MHSAA on public grounds.
So it's nothing that you've taken up with them?
We have not had that direct conversation with MHSAA officials.
All right. Thank you.
I will say the concern of expanding this to schools and school administrators who may not have that same training as MHSAA officials do and have not consulted with the medical authorities as they have in developing those procedures and processes opens up schools and students to discrimination, and that's our concern. Thank you for the question, Rep.
Representative Fitzgerald.
Thank you. Good morning. Thank you for your testimony. My question, I guess, relates similarly to my colleague's questioning, which is that have you found any civil liberties or civil rights issues with the current policy instituted by the MHSAA that does meet both federal and state guidelines?
We have not. There's no impending or current lawsuit that the American Civil Liberties Union has filed against the MHSAA for discrimination based on their current policies.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you again, Chair.
Okay, Alexandria Stam and Rachel Richards. And next up after that will be Sarah and Toya. If Sarah would like to make her way down, if she's not in the room already. Go ahead and begin.
Good morning, Chair Bagol and members of the House Government Operations Committee. I'm Alexandra Stam, the Education Policy Analyst at the Michigan League for Public Policy, and I'm joined by Rachel Richards, our Fiscal Policy and Government Relations Director. You all have our written documents, but I would like to take a moment to highlight a few of the reasons that we strongly oppose House Bills 4066 and 4469. These bills are not just discriminatory, they are dangerous. They contribute to a harmful and false narrative about transgender girls. Transgender youth, like all young people, deserve the opportunity to thrive both in the classroom and in school-sponsored activities and athletics. As an athlete, former teacher, and a high school coach for over 15 years, I know firsthand the important role that school athletics can play in the lives of our students, sometimes even serving as a lifeline for those who are marginalized and in need of a community. Participation in sports not only contributes to lower rates of absenteeism, something that Michigan schools continue to struggle with and the House has been very concerned with in committees this year, but athletic participation is also linked to improved mental health and positive perceptions of school climate. This is especially important for our transgender youth who report higher rates of bullying as well as increased symptoms of anxiety and depression compared to their peers. Importantly, these bills would negatively impact all girls, not just trans athletes. Cisgender girls have already been wrongfully targeted, accused, and subjected to invasive scrutiny if they do not outwardly present as feminine enough. These bills open the door for this kind of harassment for Michigan's student athletes. The Michigan High School Athletics Association already has clear policies in place for participation of transgender athletes. These case-by-case guidelines have been working. In fact, the MHSAA reports receiving just 2 requests a year from transgender girls wanting to play sports. This legislation unnecessarily seeks to override well-functioning policies being handled at the school and family levels where they belong. Despite representing fewer than 1% of teenagers in Michigan, transgender youth are disproportionately targeted by bad faith legislation seeking to diminish and undermine their needs. We urge the committee to reject these unnecessary proposals.
And thank you. I have nothing to add. I'm just here in case there's any further questions that we can answer.
Okay, thank you to both.
Thank you.
Okay, Sarah and Toya, welcome. And next up will be Kai Campbell Fox.
Hello, my name's Sarah Antea. I'm here to speak on, in opposition to these bills on behalf of myself as a transgender woman, as a parent of 2 high school-aged athletes, a boy and a girl, and as a coach, including a coach of some transgender athletes. These bills are simply taking away opportunities from kids who are just trying to be themselves, who are just trying to live, who just want to play the sports they've grown up loving and be a part of the team with their peers that they've grown up with, that they want to spend time with. Yes, trophies are great. Scholarships are great. The vast majority of kids, including one of my own, who plays at a very high level, are not going to get a scholarship. They're just simply not, right? It's not about that. It's not about safety. My daughter plays high school sports with guys, with boys. She's a high school wrestler. sometimes she has to wrestle the boys. And you know what? She does it. And she succeeds at it. She wins matches. She loses matches. She's a strong, independent girl. And to say that she needs protecting against potential injury, against these boys, which, let's be crystal clear here, a transgender girl is not a boy. Maybe they were born that way. Maybe somebody said that at the day they were born, but they are not a boy. I am not a man. I am a proud, independent, transgender woman who is also an athlete myself. And my God, if I could not have done the sports that I did, played on the teams that I played on, and granted, when I grew up, I wasn't fortunate enough to live my childhood as who I am. I had to pretend to be somebody else. But I still, to this day, would not have given up the opportunities that I had and the lessons that I learned and the friends that I've made playing sports. Not by a long shot. And as a coach, I see every day how important it is for these kids to be part of a team, the lessons they learn, and how they grow as human beings. And especially with my transgender athletes, how appreciative they are to be a part of the group, to be accepted by their peers, and do the thing that they love. They are not worried about a trophy. They are not worried about a scholarship. They're worried
You ought to
about playing.
make your final closing statement. You're out of time. Thank you.
You're welcome. In short, this bill is discriminatory, it is unfair, and I urge the committee to not move forward. If anyone has any questions for me, I'm happy to answer.
Representative Harris?
Thank you for being here. I appreciate your passion on the topic, and I truly appreciate wrestling. My son was a state-level wrestler, and what a phenomenal sport, and I really do think it's lifelong skills that you build there. But I'm curious, just in that realm, I mean, you're aware wrestling has weight classes, right?
Sure.
Okay, and most school districts also offer a females team, right?
Sure.
A girls team. So, do you have any comments as it relates to that? There's an avenue where the girls can choose to go to a girls team or choose to participate with the boys. And again, there's also weight classes that divide the size of the students that are wrestling against each other.
Yeah, absolutely. So my daughter is on a girls' team, and even with being on the girls' team, there are opportunities and times where she only has in her weight class another wrestler who happens to be a boy. And, you know, if she wants to wrestle that day at that meet, she has to wrestle the boy. And again, she has no qualms doing that. She's not concerned about being injured by this boy. And yes, wrestling is a sport that has weight classes, but my daughter, the same daughter, also plays roller derby. And her team competes against boys. There are other teams out there that have boys on that roller derby team. Roller derby, for those of you who don't know, is a full contact sport. Ironically enough, I am a hockey player, and my roller derby friends, because I also play roller derby, think that I'm nuts for playing hockey because it's, you know, so physical. My hockey friends think I'm playing nuts for playing roller derby because it's so physical. But my daughter goes and plays against boys who have, you know, a foot on her, 50 pounds, and, you know, like most sports, there are injuries that happen. You know, right? Boys' sports, injuries happen. Girls' sports, injuries happen. The vast majority of them are not because somebody is grossly, how do you want to say this, physically superior to them or not, right? The vast majority of injuries happen because injuries happen. It's sports. And to say that we need to protect these kids from other girls is just a false narrative. It just flat out is.
Representative Fitzgerald.
Thank you very much for your testimony. I had a question regarding participation because the 4066 actually relates to also saying that, again, female athletes would not be able to compete in men's divisions as well. Are you aware of an MHSAA process by which it would not be allowed for, because there is a women's division in wrestling now in the state of Michigan, that they would not, that you sign a waiver, that there's a process by which they have to qualify then for a female athlete to qualify to compete in the men's division?
I am not aware of the specifics of MHSAA processes. That being said, my son plays high school lacrosse this year, and we played a team last week that I happened to notice there was a female on that team playing on the boys lacrosse team. And I don't know specifically that that school district has a female lacrosse team, but the vast majority of districts that have boys lacrosse also have girls lacrosse. So I thought it was interesting, but also, good for her to get out there and play with the girls. I have a friend who, their daughter played high school lacrosse. She just graduated this last year. And to be perfectly honest with you, if you gave her the choice, could you play girls lacrosse or you want to play with the boys? She probably would have picked playing with the boys because with lacrosse, the rules and the limitations are such greater for the girls as far as contact and other gameplay. She looks at the boys' rules and goes, that looks like way more fun. So, but as far as the specifics to the MHSAA procedures, I couldn't tell you.
I appreciate you answering the question. I'm further removed from MHSAA athletics than I believe your family is, and so I appreciate you taking an attempt to answer. Thank you.
Certainly.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, Sarah Atoya? That was her, I'm sorry. So next we have Kai Campbell-Fox. The next up will be Bridget Simone.
All right. Are you ready for me? Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
Hi, my name is Kai Campbell-Fox. I'm a researcher at Michigan State University, and just last year we published a paper addressing this exact topic and how it impacted people when it was proposed in Texas. So some of the things I'd like to share today: sports are a universal joy of childhood. The value of sports is not in winning. I competed in sports, and it provided so many benefits for me, whether or not I won. We know that trans kids are more likely to drop out of school. We also know that athletes are more likely to stay in school. And so when pushing trans kids out of sports, you're potentially also pushing them out of schools and out of other spaces in which they're already facing low levels of participation. Also, I want to point out that trans girls are girls and trans boys are boys. And the reason that I use boys and girls is because so many people are trying to adultify trans children. Trans girls are still girls. They're not men. They're not even women. They're still children. And that's a very intentional use of language that people do in order to manipulate emotions. I also want to talk about the fact that this bill may be about sports, but it's not about sports because we're seeing dozens and dozens of bills around the country facing every part of trans people's lives, attacking gender-affirming care, attacking people's use of bathrooms, and that if this bill were just about sports, it wouldn't be proposed in coordination with all of these other anti-trans bills. That this is a coordinated campaign to push trans people out of public life. And then I also want to talk about that, I competed in girls' sports as a high schooler. If trans kids were allowed to participate in sports that aligned with their gender, you can say, a trans girl might take a place from a cis girl, but she also might take a spot from a trans boy, and that trans boy, if he could participate in boys' sports, would then not be taking that spot. And so logically, it doesn't actually make sense to say that someone is taking someone else's spot in that way. We also know that a lot of people have concerns about policing girls' bodies. And that saying, I competed on a girls' team in high school, and if someone had said, any person can question your genitals and demand that you be examined, I would not want to play sports. That's so much more traumatizing than anything else I can think of. And the problems that face women's sports and girls' sports, like a disproportionate amount of funding, policing girls' bodies in ways that promotes eating disorders, rampant sexual abuse by, we're just down the road from Michigan State. Have we already forgotten that Larry Nassar did not pretend to be a woman in order to sexually abuse girls? He used a position of power and people protected him. And that is a much more pressing issue. We know of at least 300 people he impacted. If we want to protect girls in sports, why are we not pushing legislation to protect girls in sports? Is that telling you?
Yeah, your final
Okay.
closing statements.
Yeah. Ultimately, this is a bill that is going to affect cis children as much as it will trans children, because we're talking about cis girls having their bodies questioned. We're talking about intersex kids, that up to 2% of, approximately 2%, it's estimated, of kids are intersex, and some don't even know. And so the people who are affected are not just trans people. So even if you're violently anti-trans, this bill is not helpful.
Representative Fitzgerald.
Thank you, Kai, for being here today, and thank you for your testimony. It seems like you did a lot of research about other legislation that has been passing, or at least introduced in other states. You talk about the enforcement of this. You talk about how, while this is talking about birth certificates and some sort of documentation, we know that there's also a great deal of scrutiny that comes under those documents themselves. I'm just curious to know if what did you find in your research about the enforcement in other states, and how that may be taking place or would potentially take place in those other places?
Sure. So specifically, I looked at, and my team looked at the Texas bill and the hearing around that. And one of the concerns that a lot of people brought up was that that bill said that you look at a birth certificate that was issued at or around the time of birth. That's very vague, and that people get birth certificates reissued for all kinds of reasons, whether it's paperwork issues or, kids who are intersex and something, when they hit puberty, they learn things about themselves that they never knew, and they have a reissued birth certificate. Custody hearings, things like that. Like, there are all kinds of things that can impact why someone might need a birth certificate reissued, and that if people are able to just question any birth certificate and say, well, is that really the correct one? Is it really, from the time that you were born? What if you changed it? It opens up a legal nest of whatever. And it gives people the latitude to harass people for their gender expression. And it gives people the latitude to complain about someone because they say, oh, well, they're too masculine looking, they must be transgender. And so that, does that answer your question?
It does, and I think that maybe just to follow up too, that there is also, is there a potential for physical harm or privacy rights to be infringed upon with the enforcement of this legislation?
Absolutely. If other athletes, other parents can demand to see someone's birth certificate, that's absolutely an invasion of privacy. It, again, opens up a lot of legal issues. And, if someone says, oh, well, you look too masculine when we're in the locker room, that's again going to be a privacy issue because that person is making a judgment saying, oh, well, you X, Y, and Z about your body makes me question that you are a girl. And so, yeah, there's a lot of layers of potential privacy issues and legal issues with that.
Yeah, I mentioned that I was an athlete in high school and college, and I had a number of friends, I had a number of peers. The men's and women's swim team not only trains together, we travel together, in some cases in non-sanctioned events, some sort of, if you will, extracurricular event. We do mixed relays. But really in thinking about this is that the people that I knew, and sometimes did look prototypically feminine or masculine, and other times they did not. And this is 10, 15, 20 years ago at this point, and even then I did see that discrimination, that scrutiny, and that bullying that came along with having an atypical body type for their gender. And so I appreciate you highlighting that in your testimony today. Thank you.
Absolutely. I competed in cross country and track, and I saw the same thing. I had short hair. I was fortunate that I had a brother on the same team as me, well, on the boys team, who was, over 6 feet tall, and I had very protective friends. But, that was something I saw as well, bullying and harassment. And we especially see that at higher rates against girls of color because of the way that we define femininity and what people think of as typically feminine, and that doesn't necessarily include black body types or, hairstyles or things that people make assumptions about. And so we've seen on a larger scale, people question, Serena Williams or Simone Biles about their body because of the assumptions we make based on race as well. And I realize I didn't talk about that, but that's something that a lot of people are concerned about as well.
Okay, Representative Harris has a question for you.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. We do appreciate your point of view on it, and I think it's important that we listen to everybody, so I do appreciate that. Did you play sports here in Michigan?
Yes.
So have you filled out that form that I was talking about, the Michigan High School Athletic Association form?
Yes, but I am 31, so
Sure.
it's been a while.
Did you have to get physicals to participate in sports?
I did, yes.
Okay. So there was some type of already medical interaction, and that information was turned into whatever school you played for?
Yeah.
Does that sound right? So I just want to clarify that. And I do appreciate your view on, I don't want to see bullying. I don't want to see sexual assaults. I don't want to see people placed in positions to become victims. I absolutely agree with you. We heard a video from Riley Gaines earlier where the women's swim team was exposed to a trans athlete that still had male genitalia and is changing right next to them. Do you see that as being problematic or a potential issue? And my concern is for that assaultive potential, right? And maybe somebody becoming a victim, especially of sexual assault. And I think especially being this close to MSU, like you brought up, I think we can all relate to that being an issue. So
I appreciate your concern. I think that we have a vast quantity of history to look at, and that there are plenty of times when athletes have been sexually assaulted, and every instance I've ever heard of was a cisgender man, and that it was not actually transgender women, and that the people who were perpetrating that were coaches and doctors and other people in those roles, and that the actual problem there has nothing to do with what genitalia they had. It was the position of power that they felt that they could abuse, and that they could take advantage of someone who was in a weaker position that was, beholden to their coach, right? That they would lose their scholarship if they didn't do what their coach wanted them to do. And that those are the stories that we hear, and that is not what I see legislation being proposed to address. And that it's essentially, it has not ever come up as an issue. At this point. And that if our real concern is, that sexual assault could occur, what are we doing to create locker rooms? Because we also know that people can commit sexual assault against people of the same sex, and that happens as well, because sexual assault isn't about, sexual attraction isn't about, I used to work at a domestic violence agency, a sexual assault agency, and that sexual violence is about power. That is always about power, that someone feels that they have the right to someone else's body. And so how do we approach this in a way that prevents people from having that power over someone else?
I agree with you. And my background is law enforcement, and I was a juvenile detective. I dealt with a lot of sexual assaults with children. It's very disgusting to me.
Yeah.
But I think it's also important, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think it's appropriate to place biological boys and girls in the same room to strip down naked next to each other. And I think that causes a potential for a lot of issues, and I'm curious if you would agree or disagree with that.
I think that since my perspective is different from yours in that I believe that trans girls are girls, and so should be, permitted to coexist with other girls, and that when we make an issue of it, because that's learned somewhere, right? I used to have an exchange student, and she lived in she's from Switzerland. I swear this is relevant. And when we have visited with her, Europeans are always shocked by the way that Americans are really like ashamed of their bodies and, you know, are really like, oh no, it's horrible to see someone with a different body from you. And so that's very culturally learned. And so I don't believe that seeing someone else's body is traumatic. I think that that's, you know, people have their own experiences, and if someone does not want to see other people's bodies, they should have the option to change in a different place. And that people should have the option, you know, for privacy if that's a concern they have. And that if someone wants to opt in and say, I would not like to change around other people, they should have that right. That's their body, and that's their choice. But I think our beliefs about bodies are very learned and very culturally specific. And that because trans women are women, I don't see a problem with that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Bridget Simone. And up next will be Gabrielle Sheets.
Good morning.
Good morning. You can have a seat and make sure that the red
I
buttons.
didn't actually want to speak.
You
I must
didn't.
have inadvertently filled out my card, and
Okay.
so I didn't want to actually speak. So
Okay,
that's all
very
I was
good.
trying
Thank
to
you.
say. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Okay, Gabrielle Sheets. And then up next after Gabrielle is Noah Martin. Is Noah Martin in here by chance? You can go first. After Noah Martin will be Anthony Dunkley. If you're in overflow, please make your way down. Is there anybody in the room that's placed a card in?
Sir, both those people meant to select, they did not want to testify.
Thank you, okay. So Gabrielle Sheets does not want to speak, nor Noah. Anthony Dunkley is next, and then Andrew Hopner. And then after Andrew Hopner will be Susan Estep. Hello. You can make your way up to the testimony table. What's your name?
My name's Anthony.
Anthony, okay. Go ahead and begin when you're ready, Anthony.
Oh boy. Sorry. So I just wanted to just share my experience and my story, just briefly. So my name is Anthony Dunkley, and I live in Macomb County, and I'm originally a Detroiter, born and raised. I've been an athlete since the age of 2, something that happens when the community soccer coach is your dad. I and most other kids have learned so much from participating in team sports, things like discipline, respect, the value of friendships, and most importantly, compassion for others. My dad has always been so proud of me for always showing good sportsmanship towards others, something that he has seen me do countless of times, even now as an adult. I have always showed compassion to others, whether their skin is different than mine, have a different religion, speak a different language, or even just simply a less skilled player than I am. I have always went above and beyond to make sure that my teammates and the opposing team have fun and just have a good time, because that's what kids do. At the age of 4, I always knew that I was different from the other kids. I knew that I was a boy. After years of wondering if I was the only person in the world, I finally did some research and discovered that there are other people that were just like me. And at the age of 12, I decided to come out to my father as a transgender man. I was truly fortunate to have a very, very accepting father. My dad has always told me that if I felt like I was a mailbox and wanted to stand outside his house all day, that he would just still love me the same way, because his job as a parent was to make sure that I had a full stomach, clean clothes, and a roof over my head. And he told me that this wasn't his life to live, and that he just wanted me to be a decent human being. From then, I started to publicly transition by wearing clothes that felt comfortable to me and going by the pronouns that I preferred and the name that suited me best, because that's the type of gender-affirming care that helped me as a teenager, not getting surgeries like most people assume. Being the only openly trans student athlete at my school never made any of my peers feel uncomfortable. They never felt that I was stronger than them or weaker than them, maybe just more skilled. But I was still just a friendly, funny, kind, and compassionate kid. My teammates never bullied me for being trans, but the parents from the opposing teams always did. My teammates protected me, and kids, they just show better compassion than the adults did. Adults didn't take the time out to listen and understand me. My peers did. Playing sports has always been the greatest thing that I have experienced in my life, and statistically, it's good for everyone's mental health. If the schools that I attended did not allow me to play, if the people around me did not show that same compassion that I have always given to others, I would not be here with you today. I would not be alive. These bills mean that I would have to play with women in college, and do you think that that's fair to them? Out of the 500,000 NCAA college students, there are less than 10 that identify as transgender, so just let the trans kids play. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Representative Fitzgerald has a question for you.
Thank you very much for your testimony. You mentioned that you had statistics about the NCAA and that there were 10 athletes
Yes.
in the NCAA who were participating in sports, trans athletes who were participating in sports. Women's sports, I think, is actually exactly how they're having to capture that data. Are you, I guess, are you more versed on the NCAA policy that this may actually, the current change to the law, or to their policy, excuse me, doesn't allow necessarily competition, but still allows for participation to grow those skills that you discuss of teamwork, camaraderie, respect for one another, that the participation is still allowed through the NCAA policy. Is that correct?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, up next is Andrew Hopner, and then following Andrew will be Susan Estep, and then Ella Scott. You may have a seat and begin when you're ready.
Hello, my name is Andrew Hepner. I am not going to speak as eloquently as some of these other people here today, I'm sure. I came today primarily because I'm an educator in the state of Michigan. I teach at Romulus Middle School, and I just wanted to, as an educator, be here in opposition to these bills. I think they are unnecessary. As was stated earlier, it was, I believe, 2 out of 170,000 was the quote earlier, and I'm also not a statistician, but I am a math teacher, and that is 0.001%. So that is effectively zero. What I wanted to bring up is that per these conversations, the sex of the individual is going to be determined based on their birth certificate, and medical professionals and scientists know that there are plenty of conditions that do not arise at birth. Intersex individuals often do not present as, or they present differently than people who have standard XY or XX chromosomes. There are a number of different conditions, chromosomal abnormalities that could arise. Turner syndrome, Klinefelter syndrome, trisomy X and XYY syndrome, all kinds of things that do not fit our standard definitions of male or female. And I feel like going just on a birth certificate doesn't really speak to all of those differences. I also did pull up the MHSS, or the MHSAA physical form. So I'm looking at it here. It does have a spot for the physician to say gender is male or female, although gender and sex are not the same thing. So yes, that is a part of the form. Thank you for your time. I think that's all I've got. Unless there are any questions.
Okay, thank you for your testimony.
Appreciate you.
Okay, Susan Estep, and then after Susan will be Ella Scott, and then Judy Zeus, I believe.
Sorry, this thing never works. Oh, there we go. Hi, my name is, can you hear me? Sorry. My name is Susan Estep. I am a former school board member, served for 6 years. And during my time there in 2021, I was a policy committee chair, and we introduced a transgender and non-binary students policy, and I'm very proud of that. It passed, even with conservative school board members, it passed 7-0, and that was wonderful. We talked to our transgender students. We talked to parents of transgender students when making these decisions. So, you know, before you all make decisions, I encourage you to reach out to the community, LGBTQ community, to see if you can talk to some of your constituents who have actually have this experience, who have had interest in, you know, their third grader, you know, fourth grader, and so on, to ask if they've, you know, have been interested in sports or participated, or some of the things that they deal with in their schools. 3 points. So the purpose of our policy, which includes participating in sports that align with your gender, and it references the MHSAA, rules as well. And so, so to foster an educational environment for all students that is safe, welcoming, and free from stigma and discrimination, and regardless of sex, sexual orientation, gender identity, or gender expression. Facilitating compliance with local, state laws concerning bullying, harassment, privacy, and discrimination, and ensure that all students have the opportunity to express themselves and live authentically. I did see the physical, as a parent, I saw the physical, the form, and so physical examination and medical clearance completed by an MD, a DO, PA, or NP. It's literally a little strip. You can actually miss it in the physical, in the form that they need to fill out, and it's just a checkbox, male and female. I did not see that representatives filled it out. And also, there's no requirement through that for a birth certificate. Honestly, I think even now there's some privacy issues with how the MHSAA, especially for trans children, I myself have a trans daughter. She's young. She wants to participate in sports with her girlfriends. I mean, why would you put her on a boys' team when she's friends with all the girls? And simply, you know, she's not like some super athlete, you know, and even if which she was great, but you know, she just wants to have friends, have fun, and it is harmful for a parent or an administrator to say your child can't play sports with their friends.
Okay, could you make your final closing statements, please?
Yes. Again, I think you should leave this to not the representatives. It's simply ridiculous. So thank you for your time today.
Thank you. Okay, Elliot Scott.
Hello, my name's Ella Scott. I wasn't actually planning on talking today. I was upstairs in the overflow room, but as I was listening, I realized I kind of had to say something because I realized, like, okay, so the whole point of these bills is to protect girls, right? You really think this is going to protect girls? Like, I was listening in, and I was just... So the whole thing, like, in order to actually enforce this, you would have to be, you know, putting kids through testing, right? To determine what actually is their biological gender. And how do you determine who goes under testing? Is it just like, because it sounds like it's almost like people can report whoever they think might be, or something like that, and that's, people have already talked about this already, but I just want to really put emphasis on this. How, like, they're going to report it based on how people look? How do we determine what makes someone look like a woman? I thought we were past this already, that women don't have to be feminine. Women don't necessarily have to look like our stereotypical image of a woman to be a woman. And this just kind of throws all that out the window. It's going to put pressure on kids to, you know, be this stereotype rather than who they are. Or it might, you know, increase a lot of insecurities as kids are like, well, I don't look like this stereotypical woman. People think I look like a boy. And a lot of those standards that we judge that off of are white beauty standards also. So this disproportionately impacts any people of color. And so I was just upstairs and I was listening to all this and I was like, how is this going to protect girls when it's holding them to standards that I thought we had already gotten to a point as a society where we realize are damaging to women? No, that's it. That's...
Representative Harris.
Thank you. I just want to clarify, in case there was a misunderstanding in this bill, that this does not require testing. This is based upon what your birth certificate says.
I mean, that's still iffy to me because, again, intersex people, like has already been discussed, you know, that's a pretty good sized percentage of kids, especially around puberty age.
Okay, thank you. Is Judy Zeus in the room?
Good morning, lady and gentlemen. I'm opposed, my name is Judy Seuss, Dr. Judy Seuss, and I'm opposed to House Bills 4066 and 4469. As a physician, a lesbian, and friend of a number of transgender individuals, I'm appalled that the state of Michigan would deny transgender girls the opportunity to experience the many benefits of participating in team sports. I think it's also kind of interesting that nothing is said about trans men or trans boys participating in men's or boys' sports. One of many things that haven't been brought up is trans individuals are taking hormones to make them become more like the gender that they feel they are on the inside. So trans girls often take a testosterone blocker and are taking estrogen, trans boys and trans. And we don't know, I don't think, how much difference those hormones play as opposed to their birth sex that they were born with. And the statistics that were given about male strength and ability to jump higher and other qualities, we don't know how much those are changed when the hormones of the other sex are taken. And while I certainly feel badly that Peyton McNabb suffered, very significant injuries, injuries happen in sports, and that is just a fact. That's it. And I treated not a large number, but a few number of transgender men and women as a family practice doctor.
Thank you. Okay, we just have just a few minutes for one more. Jennifer Wartz, representative, if you'd like to come forward. Anybody else that was here didn't get an opportunity to speak and submit their statement, we'll make sure it's on the record. I know there's a whole pile of cards in opposition as well.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, I am State Representative Jennifer Wirtz, and I had some other issues this morning, but was able to make it here for the end and just felt compelled that I wanted to come and testify. I'm a mother of 2 boys and 2 girls, and I homeschooled them for 13 years, and it was very interesting just to watch as they grew up and to see the differences and the uniqueness in each one of them. I recently heard, it was sometime this year, Riley Gaines was on Mike Rowe's podcast, and I would encourage all of you to go and take a listen to that podcast. It's called The Way I Heard It. And I think Mike summarizes it very well in there. And he references back to a childhood story, maybe some of you have read, maybe you haven't, but it's The Emperor's New Clothes. And it's a fairy tale that was written back in 1837. It tells the story of an emperor who essentially kind of became very consumed with himself, and 2 people that came to town and decided to take advantage of him and convinced him that they had made him new clothes that were invisible, that only he could see them. And he went out and prayed around in the street, and a child logically said, "You're naked." And we've lost sight of logic, and Mike brings this up very well and probably better than I'm even explaining it here. The logic here is that there is 2 genders, male and female. If you look at any medical record, you look at a birth certificate. Now, our system in Michigan tried to change that last year, and maybe that bill went through. But for thousands of years, we have accepted that there is male and female. And the tragedy is that we keep lowering and sexualizing children and taking away the innocence of children. It was one of the reasons that we chose to homeschool, because 20 years ago we saw it. I was a student at Michigan State and took a class where someone who was transitioning then came in. And it's been slowly taking effect in our society. And instead of analyzing this and getting people into counseling and and looking at what are the other issues going on possibly in your life, how can we help you? We've just said, okay, you feel like a boy or you feel like a girl, therefore you're entitled to all of these things that biologically is not true. And we have to look at that. We have to look at the devastating effects that happened to Riley Gaines.
Okay, I'm sorry, we're out of time. Appreciate your testimony
Thank
today.
you.
Okay. Okay, in the interest of time, we're going to vote next. We'll be voting on House Bill 4066 first. Vice Chair Harris moves to report House Bill 466 with recommendation as substitute H1. Mr. Clerk, will you take the roll?
On the motion to report, Chair Bagol,
Yes.
Representatives Harris. Yes. Vanderwall.
Yes.
Fitzgerald.
No.
McFall.
No.
Mr. Chair, you have 3 yeas, 2 nays, 0 pass. The motion prevails.
House Bill 4066 is reported with recommendation as substitute H1. And lastly, we'll be voting on House Bill 4469. Representative Vanderwall moves to report House Bill 4469 with recommendation. Mr. Clerk, will you please call the roll?
On the motion to report, Chair Bagol,
Yes.
Representatives Harris. Yes. Vanderwall.
Yes.
Fitzgerald.
No.
McFall.
No.
Mr. Chair, you have 3 yeas, 2 nays, 0 pass. The motion prevails.
Okay, House Bill 4469 is reported with recommendation. Okay, there being no further business before the committee, we'll stand adjourned.